Commissioned review. This one's kind of interesting. I'm going to talk about the first two episodes of Orphan Black, the original series. Now, the thing is, I have talked about Orphan Black before. It was a while ago, and by it was a while ago, I mean, it looked like this. Yeah, so it's been a fair bit. And as is standard with TV reviews, I'm only taking a look at the first two episodes, which is going to be probably for the better, but also odd for me, because a lot of the stuff that I would have to say that is unkind towards the show doesn't happen in the first two episodes. There's some stuff, I will get on that, but a lot of what ultimately made me leave, like I bailed partway into season 4. That was when I finally jumped ship. So that should tell you that I'd like, because I don't hate watch. While at this point, I have a lot of animosity towards Orphan Black for a variety of reasons, and it obviously built up. Like, it did have to build up, though. There was enough that was good about it that I stuck through, hoping it would go somewhere, but I'm going to try very hard not to have that be this review, because they only asked for me to look at the first two episodes, and if we're looking at the first two episodes, this has a strong hook. I can't pretend it doesn't. I mean, heck, it worked on me at the time. So, first of all, let's get this out of the way. Tatiana Maslany, amazing. Absolutely astounding in this show, because it's not just that, you know, she puts on a different voice and slightly different mannerisms. Like, every character feels fundamentally different from the others, and they are all really distinct. Now, she doesn't really get a ton to show off in these first two episodes. You start to see it when Sarah, who's our main one, who is also unfortunately one of the less interesting ones, which is kind of a problem the show had later on, but I'm trying not to dwell on that. But where Sarah, who's our starting character, our starting POV and our main character, encounters Allison. Now, Allison looks exactly like her, different haircut, but has a very different life. Sarah is someone with a kid who she doesn't see, who's in the custody of someone who raised her when Sarah herself was in foster care. And Mrs. S has Sarah's daughter because Sarah is a screw-up. Like, she's involved in crime and drugs, and her boyfriend is a violent drug dealer, and, like, her life's a mess. She's also British. And then there's Allison, who's a suburban soccer mom. It's a big contrast, and Tatiana Maslany sells it so well. Like, that's about the only taste you get in this first episode of how good she is, not only distinguishing these characters, but playing off herself. She's so good. Like, this is a true acting showcase for her. Like, that she should be infinitely proud of her work in this. The writers, on the other hand, yeah. But, like, the acting is one thing I will pretty much never knock about this show, even as it started to tick me off more and more as it continued and as it went on. The other characters who get main chance to kind of show off, because there's some other characters who show up, like Mrs. S shows up, and you know, we get a little bit of Paul, and so we've got some of that stuff in here, but the main ones that we get to spend time with, Sarah, Felix, her foster brother, also British, and Art, and Vic. Now, Art, okay, I need to explain this. So the thing basically opens with Sarah seeing a woman who looks just like her, not Allison, another one, who then proceeds to step in front of a subway train and be killed. Now, that woman, before she stepped out onto the subway train, took off her shoes and put down her bag, and Sarah, partly out of confusion, partly out of what the hell, grabs that stuff. Now, this ends up being Beth. Now, Beth, as Sarah learns, was a cop. Was a cop who, at the time that this happened, was involved in an officer shooting that killed a civilian. So Beth was in the middle of an inquiry. And So Art, I mentioned, is one of the people we get some spotlight on, is Beth's partner on the police force. And then there was Vic, and Vic is Sarah's aforementioned abusive drug dealing boyfriend. I would say of the three characters that we get to spend a bit of time with that aren't Sarah, or Sarah masquerading as Beth, because naturally she takes over Beth's life, partly to get answers, partly to see what she can scrounge out of it, because that's the life she lives. And out of these three, Art kind of gets the least interesting stuff at this point. What is kind of interesting is to realize that, he comes across like a good guy, but he's also, he's pushy, he's insistent, and he's demonstrably a corrupt cop. Like, he's lying to protect Beth about what happened. Now, you can make your own call as to whether that kind of corruption is at all justifiable, especially in a fictional context where this stuff, obviously decades of propaganda, has tainted audience expectations. But like, he's demonstrably a corrupt cop. He is. And that's something we learn over time as it goes. And it's interesting to sort of peel back those layers on him, but he doesn't get a lot to show off. Vic gets to show off. Vic, I think he's the best out of the supporting cast, not played by Tatiana Maslany, in these first two episodes at least, because like he's emotional, and he's got a hair trigger, not necessarily to anger, but just to mood swings. Like, he'll be grieving, he'll be sad, he'll be confused, he'll be jovial, he'll be slamming somebody against the wall. Like, he's all over the place, and it's not an easy thing to balance. The actor they got for that, really good. He's really good for that part. Felix, all right, I know further down the line, I don't dislike Felix as a character. I do find him irritating early on, just because he kind of feels like a walking series of twink boy cliches, in terms of mannerisms, interests, how casual he is with sex. He's gay, and like, you can tell even before that gets confirmed. And Felix, is a decent character. He's well performed, and he gets more going on with him later on. First introduced, I was like, I don't know about you. He gets more later, but in these first two episodes, it's meh. But like, this thing does have hooks. The whole thing of like, why is there more than one person that looks just like Sarah? Like, why? And even after like starting to look into Beth's got all her own stuff going on, so there's little smaller pocket mysteries, because Beth has this bank account she just opened with a ton of money in it. What the hell is that doing there? Now, Sarah doesn't really care. She just wants to clean it out. But these are questions for the audience to ask. Or like this officer-involved shooting. What happened there? What's the actual truth of the matter? And we do find that out over these two episodes. And so that it's layering in bigger questions as well as smaller questions, which is a good way to approach a show that's going to have a lot of questions and overriding mysteries as its overarching stuff. That's a good way to approach it, because you can't answer the overarching mysteries until further down the line, but you can have smaller mysteries that you can give answers to, so that you're still giving some satisfaction to the audience as you go and they're waiting for answers to the bigger stuff. Part of the reason I bailed on season 4 was it was really starting to feel like you guys are you either are making this up as you go, or you know where you want to end, but you want to stretch it out for more seasons, so you're just spinning your wheels and playing for time. It was one of the two. By that time, I didn't care, and I just bailed. But like, as far as starting out an overall structure of how to do a series like this, that is a good overall tactic and approach. There are still some issues and some clunkiness, some of which are personal to me. Actually, I would say for these first two episodes, most of which are personal to me. There isn't a lot that I would say is a massive problem with it, because I've gone off elsewhere about the issues I have with characters like Cosima, who I cannot stand, partially because of how it felt like she was engineered in a lab to specifically appeal to me, and it just feels like such pandering. It really feels like she was designed to strike at the heart of the intended fandom for this thing, and it felt so cynical. And then there's other problems with her. But again, I'm trying not to go off on that. Okay. There are like Allison ends up being great. Helena ends up being great. Donnie, Allison's husband, is terrific. Later on, there's Matt Frewer. He's good in everything. So like there was definitely good stuff, that kept me going for a while at least later on. But in this first bit, there were a couple of things that kind of gave me moments. And one of them is, especially when Sarah is pretending to be Beth and finds herself in a situation, particularly in the police station, where she just does not know what's going on. So she can't cover for being Beth because she doesn't even know why she's there. Like she initially doesn't even know that she is a cop and being brought in for, to handle this inquiry for being a cop. She thinks she's being arrested. And I'm not going to go so far as to call the scenes cringe, but they hit that same kind of discomfort that I do not enjoy, that cringe humor scenes do, which is that I know you are walking into a situation where you are going to make a fool of yourself, and it's just going to hurt me to watch. And again, I've said in the past, some people just like cringe, and that's fine. You're allowed. And there are some times where cringe, as much as I don't enjoy it, can still contribute to something and make something better. I'll point to things like the Black Mirror episode Nosedive. Very cringy in stretches, but it is what that story needed to be. And that's arguably the case here too, but that doesn't change my discomfort of her sitting down in a room full of people who are going to ask her questions that she knows literally no answer to. Like that just makes me uncomfortable at a gut level that I don't enjoy watching it. But that's a me problem. And I fully acknowledge that. So the other thing, okay, this is minor. However, this is the show that made me realize that this is a problem for me back when I first saw this episode. So I kind of want to highlight this anyway. This is ultimately, within the scope and scale of this show, a nitpick. But it's one of those things where I was like, and it really frustrated me. So when Sarah is being Beth, and she's at Beth's house, and Beth's, I believe, fiance is what he is, Paul, is away, and to Sarah's understanding, he's not going to be back for a little bit. But he shows up earlier than she expected. So she's still there. And so she has to try and cover for that. And the way she does is by jumping his bones, and they have sex. Now, what frustrated me about this wasn't her choice to have sex with him. I buy that for her, given the background that we're given for her, that is the kind of choice that she'd make in that situation, so she could still feel like she has some degree of control and isn't completely backed against a wall. I could buy that. Here's the thing. The way it is shot, which is not super explicit, although there's a bit more nudity than I remembered there being, but it is detailed enough, and there's no time fade. There's no gap of time because they don't go to the bedroom. They do it right there on the kitchen counter where she first starts jumping his bones. And we see enough steps in terms of like pants being brought down and whatever else. And she just mounts him that I know for a fact this was unprotected sex with a stranger. And it's not even my problem that they did that. Again, I could buy Sarah making the call that under those circumstances, whatever risk she's taking by doing that is less than continuing to fumble through and raise suspicions of this man. I could buy that from her. Boy, would I have liked literally anybody, whether it's Sarah herself or Felix later on, just to go, wait, you didn't even use a condom? Like you don't know this guy. You got to get tested. Like some concern, some acknowledgement that was an unsafe thing to do. That ticked me off, that it just did this with zero acknowledgement of even how many risks she was taking by doing this. It really bothered me even at the time I saw this. And it still bothers me. Partially because safe sex gets so little acknowledgement in entertainment. By and large, if you want to believe people are having safe sex, you have to rely on what this scene doesn't have, which is a fade in, fade out gap of time. Because like they'll start making out and there's a fade and now they're in the bedroom. You can headcanon if you want that in that transition, they, got a condom, they're using a condom, it's safe sex. Like you can headcanon that, but you'll never see something just as casual as an open condom wrapper or just somebody reaching for the damn thing. And at this point, it actively irritates me. And this was kind of the episode in the show that set that off because it made me realize just how egregious it was in this particular instance that it just made me go, what? And I know I just went off for a while on a minor thing, but part of the reason I did that was to avoid and stop myself from doing more stuff talking about things that come later. Because between character frustration with people like Cosima, and also that the writers of this did not think through the implications of a character like Cosima, and later Tony, who shows up for, I think, one episode. If he ever showed up again after that, I don't remember him showing up. They did not think through the implications of doing those characters at all. And that ticked me off even at the time. I even talked about that in, I think when I did a season 3 review, again, back with the green screen. But yeah, so this show hooked me in because these first 2 episodes are good. And like the stuff that bothers me are not objective problems. They're pretty specific to me. And this thing's got hooks for days. But those hooks lost their grip over time because just got more and more frustrated. Anyways, Orphan Black. Feel free to give your thoughts about the whole show, just these first 2 episodes, whatever your thoughts are. Talk about the spinoff. I never watched it. Sure, go ahead. I don't care if you spoil it. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help as well. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to give thanks to my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Bernabi Lex the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Pau Baraba Jago, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. I don't know, it feels right that it's October the first time you're seeing all 3 of these at the same time.